Thanks, Nick. I'm just going to share my screen, navigate the challenge of doing that. Here we go. So hopefully you can see the slides as I start the slideshow. All right. So are they visible? Can everybody see the slides? Brilliant. Yeah. That's a nod. So yeah. So this is the study that me and a very large team of people actually have been doing. The names that are on the slide here are the qualitative part of the team, but we also have 3 economists and also a mixed methods specialist who have been part of this study. So this is a multi-site comparative study trying to evaluate the impact that local area coordination has had on people's lives. And largely the reason why we looked for this funding is because, and I've heard this a lot in the conversations already, is that prevention is seen as one of the really important solutions to the current crisis that we face in adult social care, but also in public services more widely. Yet the actual evidence base for really understanding the impact that prevention has on the lives of individuals, on communities, and also on at service level on the system is actually still really underdeveloped. So this research was about plugging that gap. It was trying to find a more robust way of trying to evidence the impact of preventative interventions, of which we focus on local area coordination because it's one of the leading examples of that. So it's the first comparative multi-site study using a strengths-based model to examine strengths-based approaches to prevention. And we actually worked with people. The main questions were about understanding how did local area coordination impact on the lives of people who engage with it? How did it impact on the services in which it operates? And how did it impact upon the public service system of which it is part? We managed to secure initially 2 years funding from the National Institute for Health Research, and which is the main health and social care research funder in the country, and we just recently secured an extra 6 months funding to actually take our findings and try and put them into practice and influence policy and decision making in this area. It's a mixed methods approach, so it's participatory action research methods, so it actually mirrors the LAC approach really well in that it's about working with and not doing research on, and it's about co-producing what research you do with key decision makers and practitioners and communities themselves. And we also conducted a nested economic study as well, so it's combined methodologies. We worked with 4 LAC sites, Swansea, York, Leicestershire and Derby were the 4 sites. And we did lots of different stages of research. The first stage was a systematic review. The link in the slides actually take you to that published article. So this is a systematic review of all the existing evaluations of local area coordination that have taken place. And so it's a review of what the evidence base looks like before our study took place. And then we did lots of system level research. We worked with the local area coordination teams. We built logic models to try and capture the impact that they believe that their work has. We did interviews with system level stakeholders, supporters, some people who were sitting on the fence, and also critiques of local area coordination. So it's a really robust and inclusive kind of group of perspectives that we managed to gather in the study. And then we took this work and we actually applied it at ward level. So we worked in 4 wards, 1 in each of the 4 sites. So we worked in 1 ward in Swansea. We used a typical participatory methodology, which was to work through life stories with people who've been involved in local area coordination, and we did 12 in each ward. We ran ward level focus groups with key people within that community who've been involved in collaborating with the local area coordinator, including other services, including people who've been walked alongside, active citizens, etc. So these were really rich data as well. And then we did a few interviews with people for whom local area coordination has not kind of worked so well. So it's good because you've got that robustness of critical data as well as really a good wealth of really positive data. And then the nested economic study was really about, based on the systematic review and the qualitative data research that we did, our economist, Professor Claire Hume at Exeter, built a cost consequence analysis framework. And then also we did some economic analysis to explore how economic data could be used to evaluate and estimate the cost of implementing local area coordination and the delivery in each local authority. So that's the kind of various methods that we used. There's not time to take you through there never is the wealth of findings from this work, but there are some really key top level findings that I think is really important to get across. So first of all, one of our most dramatic findings, I believe, is that we deliberately selected wards that were socio-demographically different to each other, had a different socio-demographic makeup. They're in completely different parts of the country. And despite these demographic differences, we have a huge consistency of findings on the impact of local area coordination. And what that actually tells you is that there is something really important about the model and the approach that produces consistent outcomes for people, communities, and the public services system across where it operates. So that's actually a really significant finding that we've never had before, because there's been no previous comparative study. Also of real importance is the fundamental value that the coordinator actually plays as a connector between individuals, the community, and the public services system. So local area coordinators actually position themselves between all of these three levels. And this is really key to the kinds of outcomes that they're able to achieve. So being part of both, of all three, is really fundamental to the value that they bring when operating within local authorities. The coordinators were also a really important conduit for services to reach into communities and to gain from the community insight that the coordinators actually have. So this was a key finding from our system level stakeholders. And also, flip that over, they were also an important conduit for individuals to navigate the system, to get access to services that they were in need of or entitled to, didn't realise they were entitled to, or to navigate complex situations within the service system. So you can see that kind of two-way benefit being really strong in our data. We also found that local area coordinators were fundamental in the way that they worked with individuals around helping them to build their confidence and their capacity to respond to life challenges. So John was talking about, pulling people further away from the cliff edge or supporting people who are already at the cliff edge. What our data kind of shows is that there is lots of evidence to substantiate those claims, and actually there's probably really important evidence is showing that actually the bounce back for people can be much less when they hit crisis in the future because of that support being put in place through local area coordination. So what is really important as well in our data is the non-time bound nature of the way that local area coordination works. So it has the flexibility to work at the pace and in ways that really work for that individual, which is missed by a lot of statutory services, I think. Not their fault, it's about the limitations that are placed on statutory services. Local area coordination can build trust. It recognises that people are non-linear, that the problems that they encounter can be up and down, and it's not simply a presenting issue and a solution. It's actually understanding the whole life context and the underlying issues that people are struggling with, and putting in the kind of support system that really deals with that. And that sense that there are no limitations on the time is really important. Because we are rather short of time, I'm going to really flash through this slide quite quickly. So 70% of our life story interviewees talked about feelings of being accompanied and how that makes a dramatic difference in their life, in their lives. So the fact that somebody is there that helps to connect them to the different elements of the system or the community, or to help them build relationships, is really fundamental in terms of understanding the impact. So that consistent, reliable being there within the communities is a fundamental reason why local area coordination has such positive outcomes for people. And there's a really nice quote here about what that relationship means to people. So it's a lifeline, if you like, for people like us who don't really know where we're going or what we can do. And I think what participants articulated was how their relationship with their coordinator helps them to work collectively to achieve a range of different outcomes in their lives. And this was present at individual level, but it was also there at system level. So other services, stakeholders within the local area coordination process talked about how their coordinators are a resource to their services as well. And then at ward level, amongst the community stakeholders, they talked about how local area coordinators help connect them to people in their community through introductions, but they're also a resource and a sense of support for them to be able to introduce people to who are struggling. And also, importantly, the coordinators are quite strategic in helping bring resources into that community for capacity building, so access to micro grants, little contributions like that. Now, in terms of the Swansea findings, largely what we found in Swansea we did find everywhere else. That's a wonderful thing about this comparative study, is that the comparison worked really well, but there are some areas where the Swansea findings were much stronger than other areas, and I think that probably reflects actually what John was telling us. So areas in which the Swansea findings were really strong were around so if we look at the types of support received, first of all, accessing welfare rights and benefits was stronger in some areas than it was in Swansea. So only half of the sample talked about that being an important part of the support that they received via working with their local coordinator. But being there with consistency was extremely high in the Swansea data, higher than it was in the other 3 sites. And supporting achieving their own personal aims through self-development or community engagement was really high. So you can see a trend within the Swansea data that the community engagement part and the community capacity building part of the work that local area coordinators are doing is extremely strong in the Swansea data. And then if you look at outcomes, we have the outcomes are actually what does the person describe as the actual difference that local area coordination has made in their lives. So being accompanied and reducing isolation was extremely high across all of the sample, but it was strongest in Swansea. Building confidence and independence was high in the sample, but less high in Swansea than other sites. Increased access to services and welfare rights and a capacity to navigate the system, like I said, 50% of the sample in Swansea, much higher in a couple of the other sites in our study. But this community connectivity and building community action was highest in Swansea. It was its strongest in Swansea. So you can see that's a major outcome in the way that local area coordination is operating successfully. So what do we do with these snippets of information that I've given you? So basically, I think fundamentally, our work has a series of implications for practice and policy. I think we can show that the key learning is around the value of local area coordination as a model that connects across individual, community and system levels. So its capacity to do this is really important. And we kind of borrow on a concept that's been out there in the literature for a little while called boundary spanners. And local area coordinators are actually unique in the sense that they operate as boundary spanners, both vertically and horizontally. So they connect up the system and people and communities at all levels. And we've kind of conceptualized them a little bit like a fulcrum in engineering terms. So it's kind of it's the ability of the coordinators to pivot and kind of make connections happen. The fact that they're the glue between these levels is a really fundamental outcome and value of investing in this kind of preventative intervention. One of the challenges that we actually find is that, and I know all of you will be experiencing this, but for prevention, there's a dominance of kind of models that come out of more traditional service approaches. So the evidence that preventative approaches are required to provide, it's almost like fitting a square peg into a round hole, in that prevention is not a system where you have like a problem, an activity and a solution. It's actually more complex, and it's more nuanced around the pathways and journeys that people go through in their lives for prevention to be really successful. So we have to kind of turn that on its head a little bit and start to think about how should we understand the best way to evidence prevention. And this is what we did in our data. And not all studies are going to be funded by best part of £400,000 of NIHR money. Local area coordinating teams have got very scant resources for evidencing the work that they do. So we believe that you need to kind of turn it on its head a little bit and start understanding the context and the challenges that shape people's lives. Have this as your starting point. And what are the triggers that can spiral people into crisis? By starting here, you actually can capture the kinds of impacts that a preventative approach actually can have, which are often missed by more traditional ways of evidencing the impact of prevention. So this actually led us to develop, and I haven't got time to present this today, but we have actually developed an evidence-based framework which starts to build out from a strengths-based approach. So it's a strengths-based evidence frame for how you evidence preventative interventions like local area coordination. Basically, this focuses on LAC's ability to enhance individual and community resilience against the triggers that lead people into crisis. So understanding, by putting a preventative approach in place, what are the supports that are then there that make a difference in people's lives is actually the best way to evidence a preventative approach. And if you are interested, and I hope that some of you will be, if you are interested in finding out a little bit more about our findings, these are our contact details. There will be a full report out that we're going to be producing with Nick and his team and our partner sites. And also, if you would be interested in us coming and presenting the strengths-based evidence framework at any point in time, we'll be delighted to do so. So Nick, I'm going to hand back over to you now and stop